call you and say, Jamie's working with you.
And I'll probably tell you, well, if Jamie's working with you.
Jamie's working with
you. I'm past capacity on
I know you
everything right now.
I know you are.
I'm trying. Trying to delegate more. But it's hard.
Especially right now with the session going on.
Yeah, and I gotta get my...
Are you doing anything? I mean, you're trying to do that.
All rise, take Machado. Oh, yeah. I think we need to make they're supposed to be enrolled students, right?
Can't we hear it this time and take action next month? Yeah, I think we should take action. I think we should just.
It's very complicated.
Yeah.
They may work it out. The 5 pages.
Just send it to us.
When did that come?
12:01.
Oh, there. Oh, okay. All right, we're ready to get started. I hand it over to Ms. Becerra. I know some of our board members are making their way here, but we need to get started. We're good.
We have a quorum. Go ahead.
We have a quorum. Let's
All
go.
right.
Let's go.
So you have 2 amendment requests in front of you today. The first comes from Anson Charter Academy. Anson Charter Academy is requesting a second delay. So you will need to hear that request and vote on that amendment request. To give you a little background on the school was approved by the state board on June 1st, 2017, and was originally scheduled to open in August 2018. On June 1st, 2018, they were requested and were later granted a delay request for the first delay. The reasons for this delay request were that 3 board members had resigned. The remaining board members realized that they had several RTO evidences that were submitted late or not ready to be submitted. And at that point, they only had 8 students enrolled. So they have had their 1-year delay request, and now they are requesting a second delay request. You've seen the letter. It's also projected, but you've seen that on eBoard with their stated reasons for wanting a second delay request. Today, I have Dr. Keebler-Williams here to speak on RTO if you have any questions regarding their participation in that process, since they have been going through that for the last year or more, I guess. And then we also have a board member present in case you'd like to speak to the board member to hear from them personally, since this is a second delay request. And I do believe that the board is completely different than the original board for which the charter was approved. So would you like to hear from Dr. Williams first or the board member?
Let's hear from Dr. Williams.
Okay.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
So this board is completely new, with the longest serving board member having begun serving on October 11th, 2018. They have 6 members currently and are hoping to recruit a 7th member. Issues with this board actually began last May, when they were supposed to submit their RTO evidences that were due to expect their opening, to expect their preparation for opening in 2018. And when the deadline came, the evidences were either incomplete or missing, and the board had not reviewed them and did not know that evidences were incomplete or missing. And so that's why they, that's one of the reasons why they asked for the delay back in June of 2018. The evidences were again due this past December, on December 3rd, and when the board did not submit the evidences that were due on December 3rd, I followed up with the board chair on December 4th and asked him about the missing items, to which he responded, "I'm sorry to say I did not know they were due or what they are, but we will address them as soon as we know what to do." He had been sent an email, and this board chair is no longer on the board. He resigned as board chair on December 27th and resigned from the board fully on February 19th. But just to give you some history, he had been sent 2 emails, one indicating what needed to be completed on December 3rd, and then another inviting him to a session in September to learn about Epicenter so that he would be ready to submit the items when it was time for that to happen. And when he was reminded of that, he responded, "I never saw those emails. They must have gone to spam," which I need to start checking on a regular basis. So for the very first time in my tenure in the Office of Charter Schools, I suggested to the board chair on December 12th that the board consider relinquishing its charter, because it was clear to me at that point that they should not move forward. The board chair agreed with me, convened the board, and the rest of the board did not agree. And they voted 7-1 not to relinquish the charter and decided to move forward instead. And actually, this is the second time that this has come up with this, for this school, because back in May of 2018, the board that was seated at that time also voted to relinquish the charter. But the board chair was the one dissenting vote on that vote, and he decided to reconstitute the board and move forward despite the board's vote back in May of 2018.
The same board chair that then that you were just talking about resigned December 27th, just so I follow the whole loop.
Yes.
So everyone on the new, everyone on the board is new.
And it's been reconstituted. This is the second time, because they reconstituted when it was a 7-1 and the board chair stayed.
Yep.
And now that board chair's gone and they're reconstituted again.
They've reconstituted.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, this to me is
It's a different school.
really clear. This is not the board we gave the charter to. You can't, we gave in my opinion, us or the state board upon our recommendation gave a grant for this school to open. They haven't been able to do it. So the grant to me is no longer valid. You don't get to take a charter, hold it, pass it around to another group of people who are now the new board that we've never interviewed with, know nothing about. Even if we did know them, to me it is irrelevant. I just think it's, look, reapply.
Yeah,
Is Sylvester Bennett here?
Mr. Bennett is here, and Mr. Bennett has indicated to me just a few moments ago that while he was not on the original board, that he has been a part of the planning group all along.
Yeah.
He is now a member of the board.
Can I ask him a few questions?
Is he now? He's on the board now. Just a board.
Hey there, how are you today?
I'm fine, sir.
Are you a board member or are you the board chair?
No, I'm a board member
Okay, how long have you been on the board?
since December.
And are you the longest serving board member?
No, I'm not the longest serving. But I've been involved with this, with the charter school since it began. But I was not a board member.
Okay.
But I've been involved in the, in the process of it.
Yeah, I mean, what have y'all done to this point to get ready to open?
Okay, if I could go back, just maybe reiterate something that Dr. Keebler said. As she stated, we've had problems with basically our leadership. I think our leadership, especially after Goodall consulting firm left. We have interested people. Right now, we have a good, strong board from different. They have different walks of life. They're experienced people. The problem is the things that were not done prior to this board coming together. And we agree that there's a lot of things, we talk about that even in our meetings, that there's a lot of things, that why weren't those things done? Why wasn't, you know, what was so difficult about getting them done? So we'll realize that there's been some issues, but we have a board now that's really pushing forward to get these things done. We've gotten outside help, professional help. So we're actually trying to put it together. Matter of fact, on our last meeting, no, on our February meeting, the board actually, we discussed trying to get a meeting with this group even before this point here. We want to come before you all, let you know that we're aware of the things that happened in the past, but we're ready to move forward. We're pulling the board together to do that. And we are. We pulled the board together. We're ready to get it done.
Okay. I'm going to make a motion, but before I do that, I want to just kind of say this maybe as a recommendation to the school. It looks a lot better to relinquish your charter than to have your charter revoked when you try to open up another one. And I'm saying that because there's going to be a slight delay between if the motion that I'm going to make passes here and then passes the state board. That's going to give you time to take some action and maybe not have this happen, because I can be in favor of doing another delay on this school. It's a totally different board. Sounds like got some different ideas of what to do. Some of the main components that were in this have fallen to the wayside now. I feel like we're looking at it something totally different than we were when we approved it. So I'm going to move that the Charter School Advisory Board recommend to the state board that Anson Charter Academy's charter be revoked.
I'll second.
All right. It's been properly moved and second. Discussion on the motion.
But your recommendation was to withdraw it before that happens.
Yeah, I would hope that
Yes.
they would relinquish before this gets to the state board, because I expect that if this board is as strong as you say it is, and it may very well be, that board's going to want to come together and make a product of their own to put together to have a school in Anson County, because I think we all want a school in Anson County. And so to have y'all come together and create something that's your own and present it to us where we can interview this new board and see how everything's going, and you'll be, I mean, at the rate you're going, you'll open a school with a new application as quickly as this one was going to get open. I was thinking we were going to, I mean, this is, just too long. So, but that would be my hope, is that the school would just go ahead and relinquish that charter before the state board votes.
Yep. All right, any further discussion? All in favor? All right, motion carries unanimously. All right. At this time, we're going to have a discussion on amendments about instant connections.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I wasn't aware that this was a vote thing. I'm going to have to recuse.
Yes, and depending on the direction of the conversation, we may vote now, or we may take this as a discussion item in action next month.
Okay, I'm going to recuse just in case
Okay.
it turns into a vote. Then I don't want to be in the discussion.
Okay, the second amendment request before you today comes from North Carolina Connections Academy. And this is an amendment request that does, pursuant to statute, require state board approval. They are requesting to terminate their partnership with their management company, which is Pearson OBL. North Carolina Connections Academy is one of 2 virtual charter schools in the state, they began serving students in 2016. Based on the Financial and Business Services Division most recent data, there are approximately about 2,444 students enrolled in the school. And in your materials that are online, it's pretty extensive, the changes to the charter, because North Carolina Connections Academy will be essentially moving from partnering with Pearson, which provided, several services to the school, to different vendors. And those vendors are all outlined in the materials that were posted on eBoard and provided for you. We have, however, invited North Carolina Connections Academy here today to speak on their behalf for this amendment, because it is you know, it's a significant change for the school. And we have also invited Pearson here as well in case any questions that would pertain to that company arise in discussion. So I will go ahead and invite North Carolina Connections Academy up, and you may begin speaking with them.
Yes, please. That up there. Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing us this time to speak to you in regards to our charter amendment. For logistics, I'm not for sure of the time, Mr. Chair.
We are going to be wrapped up with this by 1:45, hopefully.
Maximum 15, because.
Yeah, so for about 15 minutes.
15 minutes. Okay, I will try to get it done
I would not talk for that entire time because we're going to have questions.
Okay. All right, we will rush through this real fast. Just one correction, we opened in 2015. So this is 4 years of operation. I will have some folks talking in regards to the transition. Would first like to acknowledge our board chair and the several families that are streaming through the services as well as staff. In addition to that, with us today, we have several of our partners behind us that's coming to support us in our initiative of moving forward with our school. So I'm going to have Mrs. Damina Blunt to come and talk about the academics and transition there. Christina Robinson is going to talk about our operations. Oh, thanks.
Is that me?
In our amendment, as we look through our mission statement, and I would like to thank Mr. Machado. Since October, we reached out to his office, and he has provided Dr. Allen and Jay Whalen from the Office of Charter School to start work with us on strategic planning. And then through that strategic planning since October, we revisited our mission statement, and what we realized is our mission statement should stay the same. We are still keeping those principles and values as we transition to become, obviously, provide those services to students across the state in the virtual setting. So that is one note to mention in our charter amendment, that our mission will still remain the same. We'd just like to talk about real quickly about this whole overview. And through to 2017, we did talk with our EMO, and we started to begin some of those transitional services. And you will see noted on some of those services in which the school did take in-house. One of those services was accreditation. The school took on ownership of its own accreditation, and we're happy to report, and one of many things of those successes, that in January we received our accreditation as a school from Advanced Ed. Of course, the school took on handbooks and school policies, and as well as some additional services. So we say that to say that there has already been some transitioning of services already to the school. Of course, that was already signed by the board as well as the EMO. The purpose of some of those transitional services, and you're going to hear this throughout in the next 13 minutes, is personalizing, customizing, improving the virtual experience, and some financial responsiveness that the board thought that was really critical as we move forward for the next 4 years, that we're going to look at the financial responsiveness of our operation to find out how we can become more efficient. And you're going to see that echo throughout the presentation for the rest of it, for the duration. For those initial transitional services, we were able to do some things with our compensation with our teachers, as well as increase some devices and services for our students. Currently, we provide desktops for students that qualify under certain guidelines. So one of the things that we started talking about in 2017 is becoming a sort of a one-to-one initiative at school where we can provide a device to every household. And that's really critical because we have a lot of homes that there's 3 and 4 students in that home. And with one desktop, that's just not feasible to have accessibility to instruction. So beginning in 2017, we started having some more discussions about improving and increasing our virtual experience. The question may be why? Why are we transitioning into becoming an independent virtual provider in North Carolina? Well, what we realized is, and I think the budget is attached to the presentation, when we looked at our budget, we started looking at ways that we can really streamline and become more efficient on our layer of services. We were seeing that quite a bit of money was leaving our state, and rightfully so in many cases, especially in the first year when we partnered with our EMO as a turnkey provider. And if you can recall, that application was approved in February 2015. So they gave us a really short amount of time in 2015 to create and operate a virtual platform. In those 4 years, with a lot of training across the country that we've been exposed, as well as in state training, we've learned a lot about virtual education. The key piece about running independently is going to be that financial responsiveness. It's financial responsiveness. How do we increase our workforce in North Carolina? How do we invest back into the tax base in North Carolina? Well, it's quite simple. We invest in people. We invest in people here in North Carolina. We invest in jobs.
Can I ask questions? Because I just want to focus in. I mean, I can go through and read this presentation and everything. I just want to kind of focus in because it sounds like what Connections is asking us to do is to bless the divorce of Pearson and Connections Academy, right? Because I kind of look at the situation we're in. So there's legislation that says that there will be 2 pilot schools, right? And currently you've got a contract with Pearson that provides certain services. If we say, no, we're not going to approve the amendment, but Pearson says, unless we can come to terms, and you say, unless we can come to terms with Pearson, we're not going to work together. So then we've got, y'all say you can't comply with the charter, but we also have a statute that says we have to have a pilot program that's going on. So I'm trying to, figure out what, where we're at as far as, what we can do, because I understand, and I think, based off of, what we've read that's come in and the materials that y'all provided, the stuff that Pearson's provided, as we look at it, I'm just trying to figure out, I understand what you want to do and understand why you want to do it. But my question is what options do we have? And that may be something that's more better for us to ask our legal team. I don't know, because I'm trying to figure out what it is that we do. We've got to, because this is different than any other school. Any other school walks up here and says, we want to sever ties with our EMO. We say, okay, well, let's evaluate if we should do that. Here, you've got the extra play of this pilot program that's statutorily mandated. So I don't know, Eric, if there's anything.
Sure, Vice Chair Walker. I think the legal questions you raise are better directed to this board in closed session. So I think hearing from the school and perhaps from Pearson will be useful, and we can shape those questions that are legal related with respect to the statute. Because you're right, this is different than the other kinds of cases that come before this board.
I mean, let's just say that for whatever reason, you and Pearson aren't able to work this out, and it sounds like y'all are pretty dead set. You're not gonna stick with them. Does Pearson own any of the assets that the school currently uses?
Currently at the school, not that I'm aware of. No.
Okay, so they don't own, the EMO doesn't own any of the equipment, any of the computer systems that the teachers use, anything like that, any of the software that would still be in use, anything like that, Pearson doesn't own.
Can we ask Pearson that too?
And I'd like to ask Pearson that too, if they've got somebody that's here, because what I'm trying to get is, I guess it's a good analogy to call this a divorce. Mm-hmm. Now you have to figure out who owns what and where it goes, right? And I think that's another issue is the school going to have, if Pearson pulls out $2 million worth of assets, what's the school going to do? How's that going to work? So that's what I'm trying to just figure out in my head. So you say that you don't think that Pearson owns any of the assets that the school's using right now?
Let me refer to the Pearson rep on the asset question, because there's assets that we own, and then there's assets that we're utilizing through Pearson, such as those devices. Those devices will go back to Pearson as far as the laptop.
And I would like to add to that, the devices, like he said, but all of our assets, our furniture, and anything that's housed within our facility is owned by us. The devices will go back, and we have already obtained a provider that will replace any of our electronic devices at a lower cost.
Okay, what's your name, just so they can put it in the minutes?
I'm Bridget Pfeiffer, and I'm the board chair.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, is there somebody from Pearson that can help to answer that too? About assets?
Hey there, good afternoon. J.W. Ragley, Pearson Online and Blended Learning for the record. Good to be back with you all. I was here in 2015 when the application was approved. The computers are assets of Pearson, just like the student technology be assets of Pearson. The platform, any textbooks, teacher training manuals, all of that would be Pearson assets. So there are assets at the school that would have to be returned.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I have a lot of questions that probably would take much longer than we have. I guess the first question I'd start with is that I've gone through the presentation. I guess I want to hear from the board why they feel this split is necessary. This presentation is being given by staff, but the staff isn't the one who holds the charter. So I guess I'd want to be able to have the board articulate why you feel the split's necessary, and then tied into that is, the value, at least at one time with the school's history, was partnering with an organization who runs many full-time virtual schools on a statewide effort all across the country, and so there's a consolidation of services that they bring to the table. How do you ensure that you can maintain or have better services provided when you're now going to be having, it sounds like, managing a lot of different entities to provide those same services instead of having one-stop shop provider? So it's a long question. So.
Again, my name is Bridget Pfeiffer, and I got started with North Carolina Connections Academy, actually, in its inception, actually as a parent. My child was coming in as an 8th grader. And when I got involved, my husband was sick, I'm self-employed, and I just saw it as a great opportunity. I didn't know anything about Connections Academy. I saw it as, hey, it's virtual, it has, curriculum already built in. I was in a private school setting. I needed to downsize, as far as money-wise. I saw it as an opportunity for us to have some flexibility while my husband was in the hospital and different things like that. So I came on. Actually, my child was there to cut the ribbons, and I don't know how I wound up speaking at our grand opening. It just so happened that they asked me to speak, and from that moment, the next year, I was a parent acting on the board as a board member. And that just evolved into me now being a charter board chairman. I'm a little nervous up here, guys.
It's all right.
But through that period, that first year, it was interesting for my child. I'm going to first speak from that perspective. It was a lot of work, a lot of learning online. It was hard. And for her, by the end of the year, it was more or less the involvement with the teachers that sold her on being involved in this this platform. It wasn't anything about connections. It was we went to some field trips. We got involved with the after schools, afterwards, after the schooling is done, and she saw other students like her in this environment. It also gave her, literally month on month, she was able to be at the hospital with my husband while he was in the hospital. I'm sorry, I'm really emotional here for some reason. But it enabled her to do that and have success. So the next year, as a board member, I came in, and I was excited because I was going to be able to see behind the scenes what she was being able to partake in. And when I came in, one of the first things that we were having a problem with was the curriculum. We found out in that first year that it was not aligned to the state standards. And so when I got started as a board member, the first conversation, the very first board meeting that I had was about an audit being done on the curriculum and the request for Pearson, at that time, Connections Education, to make some changes. And the existing board chair, as well as the existing board members, were not satisfied with the way Pearson, at that time Connections Academy, was addressing the curriculum misalignments. We found out that there were a lot of things that the board decided to do to help our students to continue to have success despite the curriculum that was coming in through Pearson. So the next year, we decided to transition some things to create some additional funds because they had to do some outside curriculum enhancements in order for our students to have some success. So that was the second year. So the third year, we came in and we were still fighting about the curriculum, we were fighting about the platform, and we were asking for changes. They kept promising changes. The changes were, oh, we're gonna give you another platform, but it won't be this year, it's gonna be next year. We're gonna give you that platform, it's gonna be the next year. So repeatedly, we were asking for these questions about the addressment to the curriculum. We had curriculum audits from outside, from inside. We continue to ask for these changes, and they didn't give them. So we were looking for ways to free up money so that we can give our students, our stakeholders, what they needed to have success. So that was why we started to transition some services back. We transitioned some services back. We freed up a lot of money. We found out that more than for example, this year, out of an $18 million budget, over $10 million was going to Connections for their, services. And we saw that if we took that back in-house, not only can we have a better curriculum that was more aligned to North Carolina, we can give our teachers, who was doing the bulk of the curriculum alignment. Right now, my daughter is a national honors student. However, most of her schools and her classes, although it's through Connections, they have to go outside of Connections to even do their classes because they're not aligned to the state standards. So we have our teachers doing additional programming and additional planners where completely in the high school where it's outside of, in order for them to hopefully have better grades. So we have our teachers doing more work, yet they're underpaid. So we saw a way that we can transition, hopefully, to a better, more aligned curriculum, give our teachers better pay, give our students better equipment. Again, like I said, we were giving desktops to students that could qualify for free and reduced lunches. Not all of our students, only the students that qualified for free and reduced lunches could have those. And it was only one per household. So if you got 3 students in that household, they would have to figure out who's going to do their lessons here and there. So we were able to look at a way that, okay, we can give every student a laptop, every student will still get the same services. We can give now those students that are having challenges, we can assign counselors and other staffing to be able to get them to the place where they can perform. And it wasn't just us. We saw this, unfortunately, in multiple Connections schools this same thing was happening. So it wasn't just here. We went to other schools, we talked to other schools about what was going on there. And we saw if we were to transition some of those things in-house, the value at what we can give our state, as far as we will have a new finance department, new HR department, again, deploying one-on-one computers. It was just so many, it just made sense. The opportunities that we would have, just being able to take those funds that's going over here, where we don't know where it was going. Our SPED department, we don't know what that money was going for. We know it goes to them, 100% of it, plus 2.5% of our revenue. But we don't know what that covers. Where can we put that money at now? Because now we have 1-to-1. We know what comes in. We know what we're getting for it. Every time we asked Pearson for where our money was going, sometime it would take 4 weeks for us to get a notice as to what did this cost for? What did we pay this for? But we were paying them to keep our finances. Yet we didn't know where it was. We had to hire an outside consulting company to explain to us what our finance packages meant, because it didn't make sense. And I'm not a genius. I have a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering. I'm a realtor. I'm looking at these documents and they didn't make sense to me. So I'm asking questions, sounding like I'm sounding dumb, but at the same time, the documents didn't make sense to finance managers. So we wanted to have more accountability. We wanted more responsibility, and they didn't want to give us that. So because they didn't want to give us the accountability that we were responsible for, because if something happens, they're not going to jail. We are. It's my name that was on those documents. And I would get them at the last minute, saying, you have to sign this. Why do I have to sign this? I don't know, but I would have to sign it. So things like this kept happening over and over again, and we just wanted to be able to have more accountability, more responsibility for the dollars that we're responsible for.
Okay.
So ask a follow-up.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Thank you. So I heard frustration with the curriculum for sure, as well as, well, again, I with respect, I'm actually interested in the board's responses because the board holds the charter.
And just, Bruce, real quick in terms of point of timing here, I think what I'm going to do just to make sure we have time, since we have all the representatives here and have allowed this conversation in this space to breathe that it does. We had originally had Achieving Excellence Charter at 1:45. We're just gonna, this conversation will have a hard stop around, hopefully before 2:15, but no later than 2:15. At that point, we'll just kind of follow the schedule as outlined if the board is okay with that. So we'll see CFA Pender at 2:15 and Alamance at 2:45. Hopefully those will go faster than the 30 minutes.
Mr. Kerr, you may be able to answer this question, but maybe a board member as well. So I heard frustration with the curriculum, but in this virtual school model where you're partnering with an EMO, it's far more than the curriculum that they're providing you. I mean, they're providing you marketing services. They provide exceptional student services to students all across the wide geographic area. They provide your learning management system, professional development for staff, the equipment for the students. So what I'm hearing you say is, or hearing the board say, is you feel you can do it at a higher quality.
Yes, sir.
Is it fair to say less expensive than what you feel you're currently paying to Pearson? Have you, in putting all these, to take on you as a board now want to take on all of these things with the staff that Pearson was providing you. Are you able to do that at the same level of quality and perhaps even at a more financially sound spending? Is that your?
Yes, sir, and thank you. That's an excellent question, and that's part of what we embedded into the presentation about how we're going to do this, because we feel and we know that it's going to be a better quality product and services at a much cheaper cost. We estimated around about a 48 to 50% savings on the services. And let's go back to one service.
How much money is that in your budget?
So attached, I think it's attached to the presentation. It's our budget is attached. We did a comparison of our tentative budget for next year as opposed to what we're operating for this current school year. And you will see, for instance, what the board chair was talking about as a one-to-one initiative. This is something out of the savings that we're expecting to purchase devices for all of our students and not just selective students. So you will see in the budget, you will see about $800,000 to do a one-to-one initiative. So you'll see that comparison there. And so when we talk about, let's say, marketing and services, we're now partnering with a local Raleigh firm to handle our marketing and PR services. And they've already started at work at a much cheaper cost. Better quality services, obviously, again, as I said earlier, increasing North Carolina workforce, putting jobs back into our state, So you'll see throughout, we have vendors that we have one vendor that has worked with a previous Connections Academy school that went independent, over 10,000 students, over 700 teachers, and they have had a perfect transition on a one-to-one deployment. And they provide those services, and we have partnered with that firm. So they're not new at all to.
Where was that? Sorry, can you repeat that?
I'm sorry.
Who made that transition successfully?
So there's a school, there was a previous Connections Academy school that made a transition in Pennsylvania. Over 10,000.
Statewide, or was it a district?
Statewide. It's a statewide virtue. It was a Connections Academy school, went to an independent level, and now they're providing one-to-one devices for their 10,000 plus students, 700 plus staffs. Our leadership team, we have traveled and visited many Connections Academy schools that went independent and some just virtual schools. And we've done our research for the past couple of years. We were in Baton Rouge, which was a Louisiana Connections Academy. And ironically, a lot of those schools were mentioned in the original application that you have in front of you. We visited that school. They went independent. They're a University of U Academy. They are now working on their 4th facility that they're purchasing statewide. It's what they call hubs. So to make it accessible for kids to come to do social pieces as well as some things as far as school-wide. They actually did a one-to-one device. They're actually looking at another piece of property to purchase. So we visited schools across to know that there's a lot of operationals involved.
How many of your current board members were on the board when the board was issued the initial pilot with Connections back in 2015?
Oh, okay, yeah, we're going to talk about the board members. So Mrs. Pfeiffer is our board from, she was with our school from the very beginning. And then our rest of the board members have been with us after. So my most recent board member, Mr. Davis, has been with us for 6 months. So the experience goes from obviously 4 years to 6 months. Mrs. Pfeiffer obviously is a realtor. We have a person who has a financial background. Dr. Davis, Dean of Higher Ed. Mrs. Staley is in Higher Ed. Mr. Davis does financial services, and Jill is also in marketing services. So, and we have another board member that'll come on next month.
None of these are.
These are not founder board members. If that's the question.
Yeah.
Yes,
Are they here in the audience?
They are streaming in. We've got one. Jill is actually overseas with Special Olympics, so they are actually streaming through services. Typically, what our board meets monthly, and it's all virtual because we're statewide. So these folks are living all across the state, and so it's very normal for them to call into meetings. Yeah.
How many of the 6 are here or online virtually?
We have.
If you're on the board, please come up to the front table. If you're on the board.
Yeah, we have. I don't know if they
just one.
They're streaming in. Yes.
We have I think everybody's streaming in. The board has been working really hard. Literally, we have had multiple meetings, obviously, almost every week, 4 hours a day. We have, literally, we have a dean of college, Dr. Davis. He actually was a principal of low-performing schools, and he's done a tremendous job. We have Jill Hemmergren, who is a marketing. She's actually in Dubai right now, so she's streaming in from there. She's doing the Special Olympics. Leland Davis has a robotics and a finance background. Avery Staley is actually a lawyer. Janine Seymour does fundraising for multiple nonprofit organizations. So we have a very strong, committed board, very busy, but yet despite their busyness, they've been involved every step of the way, every decision. You will see in our minutes that I mean, literally 4-hour meetings almost every week.
I'm glad you brought that up because that was something we're concerned about. 4-hour meetings, but with not many votes being taken and decisions being made, at least according to the minutes.
No,
so
because we've been talking about, we've been in consultation with our vendors, with our attorney, and she's been there too. So we have had multiple talks about our budget, where can we spend our dollars, what is the best move for our students.
But were there board votes on contractors coming
Yes.
in and fulfilling these services throughout your minutes?
We just recently, again, made the decision to engage We have Phillips here. We've engaged for our enrollment and technology support. We have MPI for our marketing. We have.
And that's all in your minutes
Ingenuity.
approved by the board? That's all in your minutes approved by the
Yes.
board?
Yes.
Okay, and so basically we're Dave, just so that I'm super clear on this, and then I want to hear from the Pearson people. One, I just want to say, like, I think this is too much information for us to make a vote and decision today. I just think this is like a information on first read, action next month, or discussion on first read.
My only concern, sir, is because the timing is of essence, because we have to deal with our enrollment. We have students, obviously, that we need to take care of through the end of June. However, we have seniors that are scheduled to graduate next year, and we have to be able to make sure that we have curriculum and things in place in order for those things need to be I
understand that. I just we're not going to be backed into making a quick recommendation without adequate information and due diligence on our part, and also, this is also not. This is not our problem. Honestly,
we have always been the oddball.
This has been,
we went through new sessions twice.
I mean, had we known about this in September, we could have taken it on with attitude. It is later in the year now. It's just, this is coming before us based on
I do want to point out that we did
through.
Attempt to negotiate a continued year-to-year stance and a partial transition with Pearson. They took an all-or-nothing stance, which put us in a position where we basically have to do what we have to do in order to continue to process.
Right, and I get that. I'm just trying to say, like, the lack of planning in the negotiations between you all does not make it our emergency to solve.
I understand.
I think that can we hear from the Pearson folks so we get that component, and then we can
one yes or no question before y'all, and I guess Pearson could probably answer this too. Is there any pending litigation about y'all's contract?
Yes.
Okay, because that just throws another wrench into everything.
Yeah, that's,
we have our attorney here to speak to that.
I mean, when I hear two people that are going back and forth like Pearson and y'all are, I figured there was some litigation somewhere.
It's a divorce.
So I'll restate the name for the record. J.W. Ragley with Pearson Online and Blended Learning. Title is Vice President for State and Strategic Client Relations. We've provided a written statement. In the interest of time, I'm going to forego a verbal statement in deference to y'all for any questions you may have. But I do want to take a moment to put out a couple of facts. I think facts are important in critical decisions like this. So the claim has been made that in 2016 the curriculum was unaligned. You should know that factually, the North Carolina Virtual Public School in school year 2015-16 reviewed every single course at North Carolina Connections Academy and approved every single course at North Carolina Connections Academy, which includes alignment to North Carolina standards and a determination of rigor. So the claim that the curriculum is misaligned does not match up to the facts. Second, there's a claim about finances. We support 37 public virtual schools in 28 states, serving 75,000 full-time students. The board's financial package that they receive here in North Carolina is very much the same ones that are received across the nation with the other partners, and they do not have a question about where their money is headed, what services are being provided for, how they're being charged for those services, what is the unit basis for charges. We're certainly happy and have spent hours with their financial consultant to explain it to them, but it is not any different than what is being provided to other schools. Be happy to take additional questions, but wanted to make a couple clarifying points there based on fact.
So there's litigation but currently between to kind of manage the separation of these two.
Yes, it's been our position since the very beginning, and actually of everybody here besides members of the Charter School Advisory Board, I'm actually the only person who was here at the founding of this school. I supported the school in its 2013 application through the normal process when the Charter School Advisory Board voted 7-4 to move it to the state board. And then in that summer, the legislature passed the pilot program and the state board tabled that application and then went to the pilot program. I'm actually the only one here that was here for both of those, of anybody back here. As far as the contract, it was always understood that this was a 4-year contract that ended June 30th, 2019. When the board, under previous board membership, first started talking about moving away from the Connections Academy core model, it was always understood that in 2 years' time that there would be a renewal, potentially, and there would be a discussion about what type of partnership this customer wanted going forward. It was never assumed that this was going to be an extended contract by any act of legislature. It was always a 4-year contract, and that is the litigation that we have filed today to make clear and have asked the judge what exactly is the end term of this contract, and it is our position. It is June 30th, 2019.
So what, this is what I was trying to get at the start. You're saying the end of the contract is June 30th, 2019. That's what Pearson says. Connection says they want the end of the contract to be June 30th, 2019.
So what's the issue?
So the question is for us is what do we do as far as, you know, that we have to say, okay, we think this board can make it on its own without an EMO. Because we can't force anybody to enter into a contract, even if it was, you know, I just, that's where I'm trying to, I don't know. And now we got lawyers up here.
Oh, Lord.
I feel more at home now.
For connections, I have to respond if I may.
Sure.
Excuse me.
Oh, now we got both lawyers involved.
Do we need to bang a gavel and everybody rise before we start?
We don't have a judge.
Donna Rasco, I serve as counsel to North Carolina Connections Academy, the board that, and the board that operates Connections. I indeed was not here, not for Connections anyway, years ago. I've been working with the board since around July or August, and was heavily involved in the negotiations to attempt to resolve how they were going to move forward. I think that one of the things that I did that might have been problematic is I put fresh eyes on the contracts. I didn't write any of the contracts. I put fresh eyes on them. And in the course of contemplating what was going to happen, transition or not transition, we simply raised the question that the original contract does not have a date certain for its termination. It's not there. The language for the term of the contract is coterminous with the initial charter, which in my experience working with any number of EMOs is fairly common, that the expectation going in, and I'm not speaking to specific expectations of any of these gentlemen, but I am saying that the typical expectation in my experience with EMOs in North Carolina, and I represent a good number of boards that partner with those EMOs, is the EMO goes in for the long haul. I would suggest to you that many of those EMOs have stood here and told you that. And so that would be the nature of the agreement. So the language in the actual contract is coterminous with the initial charter. There was an amendment in July 2017 that includes a whereas paragraph that refers to June 30th, 2019. Okay. Not a negotiated term, but a whereas paragraph.
Right, because
which was not unreasonable because at that point in time, there was no new legislation. That would have been a reasonable statement.
Right, so the initial charter term was for 4 years.
Correct.
And then, but then that 4 has been stricken out of the statute. It says 8
Correct.
instead now. Now, did Connections, do they need to enter into another charter with the State Board of Education? Or does that, changing that 4 to the 8, does that make it that they don't have to sign another charter?
That's a great question, and here's what we have following the legislation. The legislation simply, as you just said, struck through 4 and replaced it with 8.
Right.
There were no requirements for amendments to a charter or anything of that sort. My client continues to have their initial charter, the thing referenced in the contract with
When's
Connections.
the expiration of that charter, though, by the terms of the charter?
Well, if you look at all of the language in the charter, it was initially 4 years, but there is the standard provision in
about
that
changes
charter.
to the law, yes.
Changes to the law, and specifically changes to legislation. So my client received a letter from the Office of Chartered School acknowledging the legislation, and at that point in time, interestingly, we were in the renewal process, appropriately so. And it was pointed out that we were no longer in the renewal process We have the same charter we had when we started. The legislation has extended it. Now, I will say, and I think this was your point earlier, a lot of things have happened, as you can see, in the course of attempted negotiations over the last 3, 4, 5 months. And I would say to you, the parties are clearly at a point where it's their preference not to move forward together. I think it was described earlier as a divorce. And the focus really has already been, because it's had to be. We've got over 2,000 kids and families that are depending on us. So both parties have already been working together on almost a weekly basis to address those matters that have to be addressed day to day, to make sure current kids and families are still being served, and any kids and families that are contemplating next year that the services the school can offer are ready to go. So that's already happening. We filed our answer, which I believe you have. If you don't, I've got extra copies. I'm happy to share it, to the lawsuit earlier today. There are clearly some facts that the parties disagree on, and at the appropriate time, if you need us to, we can talk about that. There are some things in the complaint that we very much disagree with, and we've identified those in our answer. That's the status of the litigation.
So Connections wants this amendment. What does Pearson want?
So I think we'd ask the Charter School Advisory Board is to bring clarity to the families of this particular school. We would like them to be in a Connections Academy model school. When it's working, when it's following the core model, which this school has deviated from, and the results in academics have shown to decline because of it, we think that's a bad outcome. So our proposal that is actually still on the table to the board, and we would implement if they accepted it, returns us to the original application agreement, the way operations would be handled, and have a core model Connections Academy school serving North Carolina families.
But at the same time, you
But we
filed
would like
litigation
clarity.
for a
We would like
declaratory
clarity.
judgment
Mm-hmm.
saying that the contract's over at the end of this fiscal year.
That's correct. Because just because the
But you
legislature.
want to continue into it.
Well, we gave them a proposal starting in October 2000.
Mr. Walker, John Branch, counsel for Pearson.
Come up to the mic.
Yeah, you have to come over to the microphone a little closer.
John Branch, counsel for Pearson. Just to clarify, the litigation that we filed was for a declaratory judgment that the current agreement structure that the school is under with Pearson ends as of June 30th of this year. The proposal that JW is talking about takes the school back to the initial charter arrangement, or to the initial contractual arrangement between Pearson and the school as envisioned by and approved by the State Board of Education when the initial charter was approved. And so the agreement that the school is taking the position was legislatively extended for 4 years is not the same as the offer that is on the table from Pearson.
Does the offer on the table include a $500,000 a year grant?
It does. It does,
And,
yes,
and
sir.
what does that cover?
In the wording of the proposal, it would cover mutually agreeable improvements for efficacy. So that could be things outside of the scope of Pearson products and services, could be additional positions, could be other things that the school and Pearson agree would improve the efficacy of the school, and it's $500,000 per year.
Okay, I need to hear from the board chair. Can you come back up, Ms. Pfeiffer? Sorry, Ms. Pfeiffer. So why is that not a great deal for NC Connections to renegotiate with Pearson, get $500,000 in grant per year to strengthen the school and improve the model? Why is that not a good deal?
Because transitioning away from Pearson allows us to have $5 million freed up. And that went, that's with allocating $3 million of that towards teaching compensation, and as well as freeing up a $2 million fund balance. So with the changes that we are proposing, it will cause us, what we're paying them frees up $5 million. For $3 million, we add everything that we're proposing here and a $2 million fund balance. May I respond briefly to the earlier comment that the proposal returns to the original charter? I think that's an error. You'll recall that the timeline is that in July 2017, there was already an amendment that was approved
allowing some services to go back to the school away from Pearson. The current proposal from Pearson, the all or none, has every service, every product, everything under Pearson's control, including employment. In fact, employment of staff was identified as their primary non-negotiable. That's completely different than the original charter. In fact, at the time of the original charter, teachers had to be employed by the board, have been, and the desire is to continue that.
Right.
So there are some differences. I would very much disagree with the notion that their proposal takes everybody back to the original charter.
Yeah, let me almost feel like we're being hybrid mediators / arbitrators all of a sudden, and I don't think that's really what we want to do. What I'd like to do, Mr. Chair, with your permission, to make a motion that we go into closed session to discuss this matter, and with our attorney. I would say attorneys, but the other two have left you high and dry here. So to discuss, but you're very qualified and able to do it, to discuss this matter in an attorney-client related matters.
1 second.
It's properly moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Get work done. Can't get any work. Okay, great.
Turn the air conditioner.
Can you include that board's leadership committee and executive committee or town managers taking this up? Yeah. Okay. Dave was asking if we had any questions.
Mr. Chair, us back now in open session, having come out of closed session. We've been calling this a divorce, and it's a divorce that has 2,400 children involved. Pretty weighty decision, and I understand that the board has said that time's of the essence, and it may be, but it doesn't. We can't rush to try to make a decision that's not right on this. So I think we want to take our time on this. So I would move that we table this discussion until next month's meeting, and that at next month's meeting, the North Carolina Connections Academy appear again, and that every single member of their board is here in person. I know they're busy, here in person. 2,400 students, take time off, use some vacation, whatever it is, get here. 2,400 students. And I think that's our number one concern. It's a private dispute between Connections Academy and Pearson. Y'all gonna have to work it out. Hopefully work it out before you get back to us. If you do, if you don't, whatever. We want the whole board here. So I move that we table it with
And
those
representatives
conditions.
from Pearson.
And representatives from Pearson here as well until our next meeting, so that we can have some time to try to digest this and maybe get some pointed questions, that we may submit some questions in writing to ask, maybe our attorney will, or the Office of Charter Schools will, to try to get some more clarity on this. Because we're talking about a wholesale change with 2,400 students involved, and so this is going to take us some time to look at. And I don't think even if we spent till 6 o'clock here right now, we couldn't figure out what we need to figure out. So that's my motion, is that we table it till next month, and that everybody on Connections boards here, and that Pearson also sends representatives as well.
Can I second that?
Yes. It's properly moved in second. Any discussion on the motion?
What are those dates in April to kind of give the board a heads up about when they might need to attend?
I was hoping for a one-day meeting.
April 8th and 9th is what's on the calendar right now.
April 8th, Monday, April 8th?
So let's work on getting that agenda posted and telling them which day as soon as possible. All right, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, at this time, we'll see, thank you all.
Thank you.
We will see the folks from CFA Pender.
We're having a bad day with these articles that have been said about charter schools. They must come to us.
Is that the staff? Oh, I think school. Maybe all the vendors are working on it.
Wow, yeah, I think there's vendors.
There's maybe vendors.
Charter.
I'm gonna blow through these ones, guys. Both of them.
So you know, I realized this afternoon.
They're both solid. We just need to bring them in.
I've never met her. There's a good reason. I'd actually probably work with her.
Do you want us to ask?
I mean, you can.
Can I just do it for it?
I'm just saying, come on, we could get back on time here.
Yeah. but-
Oh, well, yeah, it won't take 30 minutes. So.
No.
Yeah, I think we should talk. Yeah, that's the question.
And
That's the question.
This will be their first scene.
I think it's their second, but
She's their first.
it's first, but I think it is their second. I mean, they can answer that.
Nobody said being on this board was easy.
Good afternoon.
So I am going to provide a brief overview of the clarification timeline just to refresh everyone's memory. So the Office of Charter Schools will provide an overview of each applicant up to 2 minutes. The applicant will then have up to 5 minutes to introduce themselves and to make a statement. The committee will then have up to 15 minutes to discuss and ask any questions of the applicant that they may have. The committee then has up to 5 minutes to deliberate among themselves and then vote, and then up to 3 minutes to send that committee recommendation to the full CSAB for a full vote. Okay? So our first applicant is CFA Pender. The applicant appearing before the board today is CFA Pender. This interview will be conducted by the Performance Committee and led by Alex Quigley. They are proposing to locate in Pender County. The proposed grade levels and projected student enrollment are as follows. Year 1, K through 6, 450 students. Year 2, K through 7, 650 students. Year 3, K through 8, 750 students. Year 4, K through 8, 850 students. Year 5, K through 8, 900 students. We did not have an LE impact statement submitted for this application. We did not have due diligence for this application. Pass-fail ratings are as follows. Mission, purposes, and goals, 3 fail, 2 pass. Education plan, all pass. Governance and capacity, all pass. Operations, 4 pass, 1 fail. Finance, all pass. This applicant did not submit a special request. They are not a repeat applicant. They did receive third-party assistance from Leaders Building Leaders. No direct fees were provided. This application was deemed complete. The applicant now has 5 minutes to deliver their statement.
You can introduce yourself and then share any statement that you want to make.
Thank you very much for inviting us. We're happy to be here. My name is Mark Benson. I'm the chairman. Just to give you a little background of who I am. I'm not an educator. I'm a career law enforcement, private investigator, and recently a DOD contractor. I was invited to be on the board to bring some perspective as far as safety to schools, but the main thing that I can tell you as far as my qualifications and background as a career law enforcement officer is the fact that I have seen firsthand the need of educated students. I've seen firsthand the needs for kids that have some ability to learn, some ability to capture what they've learned, and most importantly, be a productive citizen. So it was important for me to be a part of this because Pender is a county just north of me. I worked in Pender County. It's quite a large county, and I know the need. It's a rural county. It's missing a lot of special interests that we could provide. And me and my fellow board members got together, and with the board members that I've put together, this is 6 of the 7 that we have. 1 is absent because of certain needs from work. But I would like for your permission to introduce you to each one of these board members and have you understand what their qualifications are to bring this to fruition as far as a school, charter school, that can conduct the type of learning environment that needs to be in the rural county of Pender.
Mr. Benson, you live in New Hanover?
Yes, ma'am. First, I'd like to introduce the co-chair, vice chair, Brenda Tucker.
Thank you. My name is Brenda Tucker, and actually my career, I am retired out of 28.5 years in the judicial system. I am the retired clerk of court for New Hanover County, and that's where I grew up and was raised. However, my husband, who is also a retired district court judge, when he retired, he had bought a place up in Pender County. So when I retired in 2010, I moved to Pender County. My oldest daughter is 34 years old, and I have one that just turned 12 last week. And so I thought when I had my first 2, and of course the younger one is 31, I thought that I was through navigating the educational system for a while. And then Briley came along in 2007. I retired in 2010 because I felt like, honestly, I had given the state a good many of my years, and I was privileged enough to be in the system that I could retire and devote some time to just being mom. And I didn't have that opportunity with my two older, so that's what I chose to do. I'm very active in that community. I am coaching 3 softball teams. You lose your brain when you retire. I thought I would have more time, but I don't. I'm very involved with the kids. I've been very active. My daughter went to public school for the first 5 years. I just started homeschooling her this year. This has been a tremendous challenge because I do live in the flooded area of Pender County. Presently, I am living in a camper and have been in a camper since the flood. I will have hopefully an opportunity to speak a little more about the impact of that on the kids in that county when it comes to education. But storm came. I'm still involved with this group. I'm living in a camper. I'm still very passionate about what the charter school can offer the kids on that side of the county. I think it is needed. And I look forward to what this is going to bring for a lot of kids and families, more specifically in the western side of Pender County, because they are truly deserving of it and they need it.
My name is Lisa Bullard. I was a public educator in Pender County for 9 years, nationally board certified, and actually currently my trade is homeschooling housewife.
Good afternoon. My name is Bernita Jordan. I retired actually from Pender County Schools after 30 years. I grew up in Pender County, went back and worked in Pender County, 12 years in the classroom, 18 years as an administrator. I've been a member of this board just for a short time. I did not retire to sit still. So this gives me an opportunity to do something different and to be a part of children's lives continually.
Good afternoon. My name is George Johnson. I'm a resident of New Hanover County, but my family has been farming in Pender County for probably 70 years. So I'm, New Hanover County and Pender County are contiguous to one another. My background is almost 30 years of real estate development experience, so that would be useful for construction of a new school. I have some level of familiarity with charter schools. I'm on the development committee for Glow Leadership Academy, which is a girls' school in Wilmington, North Carolina. And I'm also do consulting work for Cape Fear Center for Inquiry. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you for your service. My name is Chris Millis. I'm a lifelong resident of Pender County, and it's definitely a great privilege to stand with these other board members to apply for this greatly needed choice in central and western Pender County. My background in regard to charter schools started as a concerned parent about 4 years ago, where I went to a parent meeting. Fast forward, parent meeting turned into joining the board and becoming chair of the board of Coastal Preparatory Academy. So I have the experience of being able to add to this board the knowledge of what it is to go through the ready to open process, what it is to acquire property, secure capital, and to bring a school from just a piece of paper all the way into a functioning school that can serve 450 to 900 students. Thank you for your time, and again, and thank you for your service.
Chris, what's your expertise, your job?
Yes, ma'am. I'm a professional civil engineer who practices across North Carolina.
Thank you.
Senders, sit down.
Good afternoon. My name's Greg Senders. I'm the CMO representative. One thing I would just like to bring to the board's attention, this board approved and filed a letter of intent for the NC Access Grant, and we'll make application for a weighted lottery. So thank you.
Chairman Quigley, just as clarification, Team CFA is a CMO for this school. Okay, it wasn't stated in this document.
What's the kind of interplay or relationship with Cape Fear? Team what is it? CFA Cape Fear. Is there any kind of coastal prep? I get those mixed up.
I'm sorry, what was the first part?
Is there any kind of relationship, formal, informal, between coastal prep and CFA Pender? Do we see any potential for competition between the two or anything like that?
Well, depending on what would be formal or informal, we have, their chairman of the board is on our board, yes.
Sure. Is that the only, are you the only overlapping board member, sir?
That is correct.
Okay.
And just to add further clarification, that Coastal Preparatory Academy is an independent charter.
Mhm.
We did enter into an affiliate agreement with Team CFA, but it's strictly philanthropic. And Team CFA is not a CMO or a EMO of Coastal Preparatory Academy. But again, for a little bit, and it was in the application, but I can speak at length if you like, the northern part of New Hanover is where Coastal Preparatory Academy is located on the far eastern side of New Hanover. This school will be located in central to western Pender, which is currently not served at all with any type of choice, particularly choice in curriculum. And so while we're definitely an ally, by all means of providing that choice in the area, there's no overlap and there's no arrangement, either formal or informal.
What's the distance between the two?
15, 16 miles.
Yeah, it's from far western Pender, it's over an hour drive to get to Coastal Preparatory Academy. From central Pender, it's a half-hour drive. So really what we were seeing was not just for Pender County, but also for Duplin and northern New Hanover, is that there were those who attempted to come to Coastal Preparatory Academy, but it was too much of a strain on their family to be, on the road an hour one way each. And again, this will be the first charter school, if you so award us, in Pender County. But we are strategically going to locate in central to western Pender to serve those subgroups.
But can I go further with that? The application states that 50% of Coastal Prep students live in Pender. So are you trying to attract those students away from Coastal Prep? Does Coastal Prep, what's your wait list at Coastal now?
Well, last year we went in for about 620 seats, and we had about 450 on the wait list, I believe, in addition to those seats being fully enrolled. But one thing I really want to stress, and I'm more than happy to make the point out on the map, is Coastal Preparatory Academy is in northern New Hanover, right on the Pender line.
I know where it is.
We're far east. This school will be in central to western Pender, which is a half hour to over an hour of drive.
I'm just quoting what you said in the application.
I was just trying to clarify.
Okay.
Well, I know I'm not on this committee, but I think I get what he's trying to say is that from where they're at, they're drawing into some, they're going to be drawn from different parts of Pender County.
Well, then that brings me to a different question. The Coastal Prep is built within an affluent neighborhood. I'm assuming you're going to be trying to attract a far different clientele with Team CFA Pender. Is that correct?
Actually, I mean, the makeup of Pender County, the eastern border, the lower right-hand corner, that is all oceanfront. That is all intercoastal waterway. That is fairly affluent or mostly affluent.
A lot of retirees.
Yes, ma'am. But if you look at the rest of the county, I mean, just 7 miles west of Highway 17, which runs through Hampstead and Scotts Hill, just 3 or 4 miles west of that, or really even 2 or 3 miles west of that, is rural. And you go to the far upper left-hand corner, which borders Duplin and Bladen County, it is very rural in that area. And the luxury that we have as far as what we're looking at for central and western Pender County is we've got I-40 right down the middle of it. And that would make it convenient for any other counties like Duplin, even Sampson, to come down I-40 and sit right in to the middle of Pender County.
Okay. So just what Mr. Sanders said, you are doing, that's just my clarification. So we're going to do a weighted lottery for the school?
Yes, sir.
That's great. I mean, it seems like when we start asking questions that are interview questions, I'm inclined to say, let's go ahead and plan to have the interview rather than continue to have the interview. I appreciate you all being here. I know it's a long way. It shows a lot. I think this is a strong board. It's also the first applicant that we're seeing for a school actually in Pender County. So I'm compelled to see them for an interview on kind of those two pieces alone. It's also a fairly well scoped application. So, you know, I'm in favor of bringing them in to do an interview if we don't have like a clarification question.
I'd like to make a motion that we bring Team CFA Pender before the full board next.
And I second it.
Month.
Second.
Second.
All right, properly moved and seconded. So all in favor on the performance committee? All right, and I guess I'll make a motion to the full board. We're going to make a motion to bring CFA Pender in for a full interview next month.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank y'all very much.
Well, we got to vote. Hold on. All right, so
Second.
Linda Lynn. So it's been properly moved and second. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none.
Yep.
All right. Thank you. We'll see
Now,
you.
thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Great. So next is Alamance Community School.
Right. They all want.
Sure. Yeah, you got it. Yeah, I know. You can, please, by all means.
We're going to change the agenda. I'm going to do this one.
Okay.
Okay.
The applicant appearing before the board today is Alamance Community School. This interview will be led by Stephen Walker and the Policy Committee. They are proposing to locate in Alamance County. The proposed grade levels and projected student enrollment are as follows. Year 1, K through 3, 400 students. Year 2, K through 4, 500 students. Year 3, K through 5, 600 students. Year 4, K through 6, 700 students. And Year 5, K through 7, 800 students. We do not have an LEA impact or due diligence completed for this application. Pass-fail ratings are as follows. Mission, purposes, and goals, all pass. Education plan, all pass. Governance and capacity, all pass. Operations, all pass. Finance, 2 pass, 3 fail. This applicant did not submit a special request and they're not a repeat applicant. They received third-party assistance from Charter Success Partners and no direct fee was provided. This application was deemed complete. You now have 5 minutes to deliver a statement.
Good afternoon. I'm Leslie Painter. I'm the vice chair of Alamance Community School. Natalie Wu Turner, who is our chairperson, had a baby 3 weeks early on Saturday, so she was unable to be here.
It's Tuesday now. Why couldn't she be here?
Well, that was actually what I said. I said, you know what? I've heard of a lot of ways to try to get out of coming to an interview, but she really took it a step further. I'm joined here today by Cindy Jones, one of our board members, and Corey Drawn, one of the representatives from Charter Success Partners. Justin Smith, who's also on our board, was planning on coming today, but had something come up at work. We know that school sometimes comes up. So I guess what I'll talk about for a few minutes is my experience. I have been a past board member and am a school administrator. This is my 28th year in education. Yes, I began very, very early. I'm a prodigy, I guess. The part of the reason I became involved with Alamance Community School is Natalie Wu Turner, again, who's our board chair. She graduated from Elon with an education degree, wanted to look at starting a charter school. We also have a professor from Elon on our board who lives in Alamance County, and then also another parent, Alex, who is also from Alamance County. And as they talked with me about what they were hoping to do, I became very interested. Probably the most exciting work that I have done professionally and personally was helping start a charter school, 14 years ago. And so that work was very interesting and exciting to me, so.
All right,
You're the elementary principal at Voyager, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I've got I only have one clarifying question, and it's the reason that I failed finance. If you go through and look, everybody that's reviewed this has passed everything except for finance. And that's board members, external evaluators. I mean, to get the external evaluators to pass something is difficult sometimes. And as I looked at it, and the reason that I failed it is that there's this $125,000 or $135,000 in other funds that there's no documentation where that's from, and that is more than what the surplus is in year one. So what is the other funds, and have you submitted a budget that does not contain those other funds?
So I'll let Corey Drawn speak more to this, but I can answer just from my perspective. So in our experience, $135,000, and I say in my experience as a former board member and also as a school administrator, that we feel with fundraisers, apparel sales, camps, and all before and after school, those type of funds can be raised. But I can say from experience and with certainty, we would never operate in a deficit. So if, and I know that the members of the board would never approve for us to operate at a deficit.
That's where the confusion came in, is it said that we're not counting on any funds for this budget except for state,
Right.
local, and federal funds. But then you have the line for $135,000 for fundraisers and things like that. So,
I understand.
So yes, so if I can get that clarification, and then I do have one more kind of, it's a mixture of clarifying and
And a
interview.
statement.
So I'm
No.
going to do it. So yeah, so if you want to talk about the $135,000.
Yes, sir. So yes, as Leslie indicated, in our experience, we've been able to produce funds in those other capacities. Two areas, too, that we've been able to raise funds is through different federal grant programs. So PRC 60, our schools have typically been able to access, and PRC 50. But we did discuss the fact that before the interview, if the board is given the opportunity to do a full interview, that we would submit a revised budget that did not include those other funds. As Leslie said, through our experience, we would not approve a budget or operate in a deficit, and we would do what's necessary to make sure that this school is financially solvent. And so two things right away that we had already planned on for those other funds, if we were not able to get those grants, is doing without additional positions. So the assistant principal position and a teacher assistant position would be eliminated, and we could resubmit a budget that includes those changes to the budget to show that. But like I said, in our experience, this is fairly low average for what we've experienced, and feel very confident that the school will see the same type of funds in that category. Yes.
And then the only other question that I've got is, I think it may make some question your sanity right now. Why are you going to go into the North Carolina State Teachers and Employees Retirement Plan, knowing that it's,
you could talk about it. I do want to say
18.5%,
19.5
19.5 next year. Whoa.
Wow. It is.
Okay.
And one of the things I would just want to mention is we have talked about the fact that that would be one of the options. As we said, it's whatever it takes to operate in a financially responsible way we're going to do. So during the planning year, that certainly is something that we would evaluate. But
You can give teachers 10% of their salary into 401k, and they would be ecstatic, and it would save you 9%.
And what I'll say is that I know certainly to attract high quality and experienced teachers who have already that are already invested into the state retirement system, it's really hard to get those people if you're not offering that. However, again, you're right. 10% increase, some people might say, you know what, to heck with it. Yeah, I'll do a 401k instead. And I've worked at a school who did that, and I was fine with that. But I think it always depends too upon situations. So, but it's on the table.
And that's, so it's the 19.5%, but then you've got the 6% or whatever that's the contribution. I mean, it gets
It's
It
very
gets really
expensive. It's
Well, yeah, does anybody else have
And
any
next
clarification
to impossible
questions?
to get out.
Don't
ask
do it.
Kipp.
Yes, we
That-
do.
That was gonna be my question, Cheryl. Can you?
They told Kipp it was gonna cost them
Half and
$3 million to get out.
To get
Yeah.
out?
Don't do it.
Anyway, so once you make that decision, you are in.
yes,
you are
sir.
in
And
it.
we are aware of that,
I
having
will say this.
having been down that road before.
We,
So
when we were trying to decide whether we were gonna get in or not, our concern was the same, but what we found is teachers that were vested just left their money there, and then they also have our 403B.
well, they were a lot smarter than I was, because I took mine out when I left the state initially, and that was really, really foolish.
Leave it
It
in,
will
you still
cost a
draw it,
lot
just
for
not
me to
gonna
buy
use
it back.
You can use what you got from the charter school to pay off
Yeah.
your state at the end if you wanna do that.
Yeah, you can. So, anybody have any other clarifying questions? All right, well, I move we bring them in for a full interview. All right, we got a motion and a second in the committee. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? All right, Mr. Chair, on behalf of the policy committee, I move that we bring in Alamance Community School for a full interview next month.
Thank you very much.
I'll second.
Oh, you gotta, I second it.
We gotta
I
vote.
apologize.
All right, it's been seconded, properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All right, great. Thank you.
All right, now thank you.
All right. 246, back on track.
We're done with clarification.
Done with clarifications.
Next month we
It's a
have
big
3
milestone.
interviews.
3 interviews, and then we're done with the application cycle, right? You have a big party then?
All right, so now we have low performing presentations from Kipp and Zeca. Are either of them here? Yay, Kipp Charlotte, ready to go.
Okay, I can use this. All right, great.
I might have to leave. I'm gonna have to go.
Hello. Just give me a thumbs up when you guys are ready.
Yep, we're ready.
We're ready. Okay, great. Hello. So I'm going to quickly go through this because I'd rather answer questions than talk. I am Anoki Soraya. I'm the new head of schools for Kipp Charlotte. I joined in July. That's a little bit about me. I come from New York City. I was the last role I held in New York City was Kipp New York City's chief academic officer, but I was also a founding principal and a managing director of elementary schools. And I graduated from Bryn Mawr College, yay, and Bank Street and Teachers College. So I love learning, which is part of the reason I love education, and it's why I came to Kipp. But I did start my career with the New York City Department of Education as well. And it is
That
my
you in the picture?
That's me at 5.
Okay.
This is my typical introduction slide, so I just stole it from something else. But yes, that's me at 5. And the reason I do this work is because education transformed my life, and so working with Kipp has given me the opportunity to make sure that all children have the same types of opportunities that I had as a child. So again, I came and I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do today. So I'm going to share a little bit about our school. Our mission is to ensure that all of our kids have the habits of mind, character skills, and knowledge to be successful to and through college and excel in the nation's finest high schools and colleges. Ultimately, we want kids to lead full lives, to lead choice-filled lives, and be our future leaders of Charlotte and agents of change in the world and beyond. We have 2 schools. We have Kipp Academy Charlotte, which was founded in 2007. That's our middle school, and currently it is grades 6 through 8. And we have Kipp Change Academy, which was founded in 2016, and that is currently grades K1 and 2 and 4 and 5. Next year, we will transition, we'll be fully grown, K8, and our elementary school will have kinder through 4th grade, and our middle school will have 5th through 8th grade. It's just a list of our board of directors. You guys can look at that at your leisure. They are awesome. They ask a lot of really good questions. We have monthly meetings where they push the school and each other to make sure that we are both academically moving forward and making improvements and adjustments, but also financially, operationally, ensuring that our schools are healthy. We have 2 great school leaders who have been with us for a long time. Malcolm Brooks is the founder of Kipp Change Academy, our elementary school. There's a little bit about him. He worked with Kipp Charlotte
As a teacher in 2009, he went on to be a New Leaders resident principal with the CMS schools, and then came back to Kipp in 2013 as an assistant principal before completing the Kipp Fisher Fellow Program to found our elementary school. Tiffany Flowers is the co-founder and school leader of our middle school. Tiffany most recently was the executive director for Kipp Charlotte, and this year decided to go back into the principal seat as we're going through an improvement process and a turnaround phase for our middle school. So currently we have 744 students. 88% of our students are identify as African American or Black, 10% identify as Latinx, 2% identify as other. 100% of our students have access to free or reduced price meals. CEP direct certification is 100%, and 10% of our students receive special education services. So here we talk about academics and the reason that we're here. So at the end of last year, our EOG results are reflected there. I came in and I saw this, and most of you hopefully are reacting the same way I did. Concerned, overwhelmed, and disheartened because we're not doing justice for our kids. We set goals for this year that we wanted to make sure that they were audacious but also achievable. And so our goals for this year, 50% of students in grades 4 through 7 are meeting or exceeding expectations on the EOG for both ELA and math, and 70% in science. For 8th grade, we set the goal a little bit higher at 55% and 70%, again, 70% for science. So a little bit about academics. So we are using the North Carolina check-ins for ELA as our interims. These are the results of our interims from the second round. And on the next slide is a comparison from round 1 to round 2. We have seen some promising growth. We are optimistic, but also cautious about the growth. We've seen the most growth in 5th and 6th grade. The only place we did not see growth was 4th grade. And so we are concerned there to see the dip. The reason I say we're cautiously optimistic is because the check-ins are much shorter than the regular EOGs. Yes.
Can you just explain? So the IA1 and IA2, those are the check-in one?
Yeah, the check-in 1, check-in 2.
And then 20, are these averages or these percent?
This is the percent of students that scored 70% or above.
Okay.
So we looked at, we use 70% or above as the cutoff. It's at the bottom of the chart. I think it's cut off. Because we wanted to set it as a high bar. I know the EOG cutoffs are lower, but we really wanted to focus on, like, if they're hitting 70% or above on these, then we're pretty confident that they will score 3, 4, or 5. If they're hitting in the 60 to 69, we're also pretty confident that they'll score in the 3, 4, or 5 based on the way that the EOGs have been scored in the past. And so then the kids in the pink range are our kids that are cusp kids. What we're most concerned about are the kids in the red. Math shows a really different picture. We are struggling mightily in math for lots of different reasons. Our kids are struggling because they're challenged by multi-step problems, and we're seeing a lot of basic computation errors and lots of foundational gaps that we're attempting to fill with our students, particularly in our middle school, but across the band. For these IAs, so the math IAs are not North Carolina check-ins. These are interim assessments that we created because we wanted to make sure that they matched what we were teaching at the time, and the check-ins are a little different than the curriculum we use. But what we did find is that teachers were still off pace, and so not all of the content was taught prior to the interim assessment too. Our biggest challenge right now is that our teacher content knowledge and expertise is fairly low across 4th through 8th grade. We have newer teachers who have really had very little experience teaching math. And so that is a big concern for us. And you will see that across the board, there's a drop from interim assessment 1 to interim assessment 2 in math. Our greatest area of concern is 8th grade math, and we've made some changes. I'm going to talk about the changes and what we're working on to address that. But across the board, math is our biggest area of concern because of the downward trends. So a couple of things that we've done, we started the year doing as we knew that we were a school in need of improvement. So first, I was hired on to come and oversee our principals and manage our principals and start working on alignment of curriculum, making sure that everything is standards aligned, and improving instructional practice as well as leadership practices. Tiffany Flowers resumed her role as a school leader to stabilize that school, both culturally and academically. We started with culture. Kids need to love to be there. Kids need to want to come to there. They need to be safe. And so that's where we started. And Tiffany is developing her instructional leadership to coach teachers and coach her leaders to coach teachers as well. And then we also recently hired Jamie McCarthy, a recruitment manager. She works with us part-time, but she is also helping us as we continue to think about not just for this year, but what is long-term, what does Kipp Charlotte need long-term? And so we're again looking to recruit, hire, and retain talented, experienced, and certified teachers for both schools. In terms of academic and curricular shifts, we made quite a few. First is that we're implementing Common Core aligned curriculum in grades K through 8. So we have an internal Kipp curriculum called Kipp Wheatley. It's a close reading curriculum. Standards aligned. Every grade is using it. Varies in terms of implementation, but we know that at least all kids are being put in front of rigorous grade level or above grade level text on a daily basis. We're also using the Eureka math curriculum in all grades, K to 8. Again, the challenge here is implementation and content knowledge. The curriculum itself is strong and is exposing our kids to the things that they need. We're also using a science curriculum called Amplify. Again, it's standards aligned. We wanted to make sure alignment was really big because we wanted to make sure that we were able to hold our teachers accountable to the work they need to do. All teachers across both schools have common planning time now built into their schedule. So they're able to meet with other teachers on the grade or other teachers in their content on a daily basis with their coaches or their managers. Teachers participate in a content team meeting weekly. This is when they're looking at the lessons for the upcoming week, they're studying the lessons, they're analyzing student work, looking at exit tickets or other data to determine next steps for instruction. Teachers are being observed daily and receiving feedback on a daily or weekly basis, depending on their need. This is done by the assistant principals at each school. After IA2's results, we made some shifts at the middle school to increase ELA and math instructional time to 90 minutes. It was 60 minutes. And then increase add an ELA and a math intervention block, so 45 minutes of each at the middle school. For ELA, focused on just eyes on text, so more sustained reading, but also reading with feedback, so conferring. So teachers are doing a lot more conferring with kids, so it's individualized. We're also using a computerized program called Read Theory to get kids more at-bats at short passages and answering questions. For math, our focus is around building foundational skills, and so every day that intervention block starts with automaticity or fluency practice. And then kids go into a session with Khan Academy with teachers giving them feedback. There are 2 teachers in each of the math blocks with the kids. In the elementary school, we have guided reading block for all grades, K-5. And so kids are receiving small group reading instruction on at least 3 times a week. And then, as I mentioned, we're using a lot of different instructional technology to support differentiation for our kids because our kids are at so many different levels. We want to make sure that we're actually meeting them where they are, in addition to teaching them grade level work. So we're using iReady, Khan Academy, Read Theory are a couple that we're using. In terms of our improvement plan, we've achieved full implementation status of 8 of our 12 indicators. I'll let you just look at them up there. Keep going. And we are working on these 4 indicators. Tiered instructional system to allow teachers to deliver evidence-based instruction aligned to individual needs. So I think one of our bigger challenges is addressing the individual needs, particularly of our ENL population and our EC populations. So we want to make sure that our kids are getting differentiated and specific instruction that addresses their needs. Particularly in the middle school, but across our schools, our students also come in with a variety of trauma, a variety of social emotional needs that we are just learning how to best address. We have partnered with Turning Point, which is an organization in Charlotte, to provide additional counseling to students. We have a full-time social worker at our elementary school. We're planning to hire a full-time social worker at our middle school for next year. And we're bringing in community resources to continue to support students' emotional and social development. We communicate regularly with parents, but what struck me about this is we're not doing enough conversations around curriculum and how parents can help their kids at home. And so we're planning some curriculum nights towards the end of the year, and we want to bring parents back into the schools. We do we have monthly newsletters, we have weekly newsletters that go home for families, so they know what's happening, but we haven't engaged them to the level that we'd like to in terms of how they can help at home. And last, this is really inconsistent. We have done a lot of professional development on effective classroom management and positive classroom management. It's inconsistent as to how it's implemented in classrooms, and so our leaders find themselves giving a lot more management feedback than academic feedback, and they need to be doing both with certain teachers. A couple of next steps. So we're going to continue teacher and leader development to build content knowledge and increase the bar of excellence for all. So we're really pushing content knowledge development through internalization, lesson plan internalization, studying the standards to build everyone's knowledge. Continued data analysis and reteach intervention for all students. Using data is really important to understanding where our kids are and where they need to grow. It also allows us, when we're tracking data, and not just the interim data, but exit tickets, weekly quizzes, it helps our teachers see small wins and see small steps of growth, because often when you see just interim data, it can be deflating, and it hides some of the growth that is happening. We're continuing to develop our student culture. One of the things we're working on to implement next year is an advisory program in middle school, and ongoing coaching and professional development for teachers around ways to de-escalate students, ways to talk with kids, ways to address their social emotional needs in class. I mentioned we're hiring a social worker for the middle school, and teacher recruitment and hiring for math, science, and EC teachers that have a lot of skill and expertise. Questions? Anoki. Yeah.
I think they're fortunate to have you on board.
Thank you.
Looks like that you're making some positive changes that hopefully will be reflected at the end of the year.
I hope so. We're working
Although
hard.
those that one check-in's kind of scary.
The math,
Yeah.
Yes.
So you shifted a lot of time in the schedule to provide more ELA and math and to put in that intervention block. What had to be given up to encompass that?
So we reduced our science and social studies blocks from 60 minutes to 45 minutes.
Okay.
And we shifted around our enrichment blocks a little bit. We didn't take anything away. So we wanted kids to still have their enrichments and have their recess. Like if they didn't, then they would.
It's unbearable.
No way. It's unbearable for me to watch even. And so we didn't take that away, but we did cut down a little bit of the science and social studies. It's not ideal. But we need our kids to have the basic skills for reading and math in order to even be successful in science and social studies. Other questions?
Yeah, I feel like you covered all of the key points. You're definitely doing
We're
certainly
trying.
all the things that I would.
Do you know where I
think
can
that you
find some really strong math teachers?
Good luck with
If you
that.
find those, let me know.
Yeah.
Or can we all come together and create a math academy for teachers?
I have one question and then one comment.
Yes.
The question is, it's really, I mean, I'm sure you can answer it. When is this school up for renewal?
I actually don't know the answer to that.
They got a 10-year 2 years ago.
Okay.
7.
So plenty of time. And
Is
then,
it one school or two schools?
Just
One charter.
one charter.
One charter.
Two different locations, right?
Yep. They're near each other, but
different
not the same
grades.
campus.
Okay.
But one charter.
Yeah.
So you started out with the upper level
Mm-hmm.
and then added
The elementary school, yeah.
my comment is on every, what we've seen every low performing and continue low performing school come up. This was the most well thought out plan I think I've seen of them for the most part. There's been some that have been good too, but this one actually addressed it. It seemed like all the other ones came up and wanted to just talk about all the good things that they did and never wanted to address the hard things like you addressed about, well, here's what we've done on math and we're still trying to work through this math thing, you know, that we've got that. And so I felt like your presentation was very real and, you know, and didn't try to gloss over it and say everything was great. You said we're low performing for a reason and here's how we're going to try to get out of it. And you had it laid out in very detailed steps of how you were going to do it. And I thank you for that.
Thank you. And again, you can feel free to send any teachers that are excited about doing that work. Come down to Charlotte. Because I do think the challenge I didn't mention is finding excellent teachers.
So have you, you have a lot of universities there in Charlotte. Have you connected with their teacher
Yes,
ed
we're going to we've gone to every career fair that's around. We're tapping into Teacher America, Profound Gentlemen. I think we're reaching out to lots of people. I think there's just a shortage of teachers in Charlotte.
And math especially.
And math especially, yep. And so, you know, the alternative is really for us to grow our own teachers, and currently we're not in a financial state where we can invest too much into that, like into just like a teacher academy. But again, if anyone ever wants to start a math teacher academy, I don't know enough about like 8th grade math. It's not my jam, but I can find people who can teach it.
Was it easier to find math teachers before Common Core was implemented?
No, math has always been.
Math's always
It's
been the
just
hardest
harder
one.
for the people you find to understand how to teach it.
Right. So now the math teachers are just of the same caliber.
Yeah. They're teaching a math that was not what they learned.
It sounds like you're putting all the right pieces in place. Hopefully you'll see growth. Did you meet or exceed growth last year?
We saw growth, but we did not. I don't even. No, you're shaking your head. No. Tammy knows everything.
Did not meet growth last year, Tim?
I cannot remember. I'm sorry.
I think you will this year.
I hope so.
Yeah.
If we don't, then I'm going to come back here and say, what should we do?
Yeah.
So there is advisory in your title. So.
We advise the state board, not the schools.
Yeah.
You're on your own.
Yeah.
Let it come back, Stephen.
Thank you for your honesty. We appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Have a good day.
You too.
Safe drive back.
All right. We have Zeca next. And then Paul R. Brown.
And we're done.
Does anybody know when Zeca's up for renewal?
Let's see.
If we get more information, they use this to
So that's on
This is their old. We need to see this. There we go, find it.
We're up for renewal in 2023.
Great. All right. Thank you for being here. We look forward to hearing your presentation.
Thank you so much for allowing us the opportunity to come up and share with you our progress that we've made over the past year. I brought with me our board chair, Dr. Thomasina Irvin, and our vice chair, Attorney Wright. I also brought a few of my admin staff, my curriculum director, Carolyn Lane, and my finance director, Jackie Morrison. And I also brought with me one of our advisors to myself and to the board, Dr. Jackson. And Dr. Jackson and I will be presenting this information to you today. So last year was a very exciting year for us. We made a lot of changes since we've last been up here to visit with you guys and to share. You know, the last time we were here, we talked about, you know, we were just beginning to understand what type of student we served. And we had to go back and make sure we made some alignments with our staff to be able to handle the population that we were serving. And that first change started with myself.
I had to go back and just learn how to enhance and increase my ability to lead an organization that requires a high level of emotional intelligence to service the kids that we serve. And then we also went in and made a lot of changes to our hiring practices. We revamped the questions that we asked teachers. We revamped our recruitment process of knowing how to come in and bring in teachers who can work in high trauma areas. We also revamped our training program for our teachers. We had to make a lot of changes, and Dr. Jackson, he's going to get into that part when he shares his part of the presentation. And then we also took a look at our parent involvement piece, and we made some changes with that because we had parents who came in and just needed a lot of support of how to be advocates for their children and how to, you know, just be good parents and be able to help their child at home with us. So we added a training model for our parents as well. And then our curriculum, we didn't have a specialized curriculum for us being an art integrated school. We brought in Dr. Janet Hale, and she did a lot of training with the staff on the scope and sequence of the standards and just increasing their understanding of, one, how to teach to the standard, and also the development of a specialized curriculum for our school. And that's an ongoing process that we're still working on for this year as well. And then we also increased our accountability piece in terms of, you know, for us being a small charter, understanding EVOS and how those numbers work for us. Like, for instance, our 8th grade class, we were able to make all those kids proficient last year, but then it didn't show up in EVOS because it was only 6 students in the class. So we being myself and my curriculum director, we spent a lot of time, you know, going in and training on just how to understand EVOS and how to understand the formula that is used for being able to help us to make growth in the reading and math area. We also added NC check-ins this year so that we were able to monitor our growth, you know, throughout the year in addition with our use of iReady. So, you know, all those things that we did last year allowed us to take the F that we had as in reading, and we changed that to a D. And the math is still an area of concern for us. We sent all our teachers to the Math Institute at Marriott University to train them on how to teach math. And we're still working with increasing the content knowledge of our teachers on just how to provide that instructional services for math. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Jackson to begin our slides, and then I'll come up with some more additional information.
Greetings, everyone. If I could defer your attention here on what I believe has taken my interest with Zeca and caused us to come up with a very specialized plan. What I was able to find in the early stages of working with Zeca, if you look at our trauma list here, we're a small school under 200 kids, but what we wanted to do was have a specialized approach to serving our youth. So what you often hear is that poverty-stricken schools can do well, and they absolutely can. The uniqueness about our population was our only deficit was not economic. What we found that there were real life deficits. And if you look at this, these 10 here, what we seen was, after investigating, working with children and families, we noticed that we had a lot of our children who did not have their biological parents because they were deceased. We noticed that we had a very strong group of young people who were managing issues of molestation and things of that nature, and the disconnect between parents and their children was one of the highest I've seen for such a small group. So what we did was our approach was to create a situation where we train and help the staff to better understand kids who come from traumatic backgrounds. The same thing we would do with police, mental health workers, people who are incarcerated, our staff on the inside of the prisons. And so what that has done, it has begun to give the staff some backdrop on understanding how to work with people who are emotionally you need to build up with confidence, how to deal with their triggers, and things of that nature. The thing that we found that has changed it for us, that is going to be our competitive advantage moving forward, what we didn't realize was that not only do 100% of our children at our school have at least functionally at least 3 to 5 of these, what we were able to find out was that about 90% of our staff is also managing the issues of life. If you look at where our population is, about half of our staff is military families coming in and out of the area. They've moved around a lot, family issues. So the way we went about it was to train and support staff in dealing with their ongoing personal issues, how to personally build yourself up, and how to deal with kids in this arena as well. And this is what's going to be our advantage moving forward. So in 1/2 semester of doing that, you've seen that our turnover of staff dramatically increased. We turned over, so the year before I got there, we turned over 100%. After this year, we've been able to really keep that down. We've kept about 80 to 85% of the people we hired in place. And so with the stability of staff, you can count on seeing growth from us in the classroom. That means a better relation and a better ongoing continuous relationship. The other piece that I think would be valuable for the board to understand, if you look here at the screen, we've been able to break down, there's 4 components of a successful teacher. Now, I've trained over 500,000 teachers myself, so I understand that when you train teachers, oftentimes we do not understand the area of need. So if you look here, it breaks into 4 pillars. The first part is knowledge of your subject. The second part is content and delivery. The third part is relation with coworkers. And this 4th part is the ability to manage student personality and issues. So what we were able to break up the areas in which we need to work with our staff on. So we're bringing Dr. Hale is getting our troops up to the capacity where the content is there, the rigor is there, understanding how to present that content. And what we've seen was, by the vote of our staff, we've seen that the issues that they struggled with most was the ability to manage the personality or difficult personalities of students. So by knowing where your needs are legitimately, it's allowed us to have a more concise training program that speaks to our needs versus just doing random activity, hoping that we hit. We now know first of all, we know our student base very clearly, and now we know our teacher base very clearly. When we came into it, we said, let's just get all licensed teachers, and that would make an automatic change. That has not checked out, and that doesn't check out worldwide, because what we have not calculated is what if the teachers are struggling in their personal life, their personal journey, and by neglecting that, you start seeing pretty much all my coworkers worldwide are having problems with teacher retention, ongoing behavior issues with teachers, fallouts between principals and teachers. So we've been able to plug that hole. That was a big hole before we got there, but we've been able to work on that and get it together. So this year, it's going to track to where, so last year in the back half of the year, we were able to get gains in reading. This year, and I really want to forward those test scores to you, this approach will show up in the bottom line, which is test scores in business, because we have a more stable, concise environment, and that's what's been our competitive advantage to making good growth over the course of the year.
So our goals that are in our school improvement plan, we want to continue to move or increase our school performance grades in reading from that D to a C. We're working to increase the school performance grade in math from that F to a C. And we want to increase our overall reading and math proficiency from the 27.3%. We're shooting for a target of 40% for this year. We do know that we're testing about 84 kids, and with our demographics, just to go up here, with our to-date already data that we're using is showing that we have about 33% of us, it's hard to see the numbers from this far, so about 33% of our students in math, about 2 are years behind, and we have about 10% of the population that's on grade level right now, and the red indicates the percentage of kids that's only 1 year behind. So with the what we've seen with our NC check-ins is we're seeing steady progression in terms of the number of students who on check-in 1 did not score proficient. We saw an increase on check-in 2 of how many was able to reach our target, which was set at 70%. So we're seeing that increase in reading more so than we are in math. So in our teacher training, we're now having those tough conversations about what more can we do in the areas of math, because the math is just not moving the same way that our reading is. And that shows true also in our iReady data as well.
So what was the overall school grade last year?
The overall grade was an F.
Was an F again?
Yes.
Did you meet growth last year?
We met growth, yes.
So for the past 2 years, you've had an F, but you've met growth.
Yes, ma'am. We've always met growth. We just are now working to try to get to the point where we're exceeding growth.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is you got to work towards, because I looked at the growth score and the index was a -2. So,
right.
You know, one student would have made it not meet growth.
Right.
You know, so, you know,
Right.
I mean, it was 2.00. I mean, it was right on that line. So, I mean, I think y'all really got to bump it up. And if you go back to that where you had those charts, one more up. Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about 1 year behind in math and then 1 year behind in reading, you know, if you really focus in, I think you could probably move a lot of those kids. You know, that's there. I think it may take you a couple years to move some of those that are 2 years behind. But if you know, to me, I mean, you got a big job ahead of you. But when I look at that, I see that there's at least some, you know, 1 year behind. I'd feel a lot more worried if it was, you know, 60% 2 years or more behind. I think it would be difficult for you to do it, but I think you could do it. But it's going to be.
And that's some of the positive that came from all the major changes that we made last year. We were able to move some of those students that were at that two year behind mark up to being just 1 year behind. Yeah. And then we've spent a lot of time this year talking about, you know, that targeted intervention that those kids are needing. So they're running their data profiles where we have the teachers and the students monitoring their data on a daily basis. The small group interventions, we put those in place. We brought in some outside tutors to come in and just do some basic tutoring and basic math facts because we found that there was a lot of gaps even in that area. So we have done a lot for just some, you know, targeted intervention for those ones that are just 1 year behind.
Because I want to see y'all exceed growth, but even if you don't exceed growth, I want to see a positive growth index.
Right.
Not a net growth, but still with a negative growth index. I want to see a positive, you know, positive move forward. And I know you do too.
Right. And to be honest with you, you know, like I said, I started out by saying one of the first things I had to do after because we worked our butts off last year, and what we thought was, you know, it was just important to increase the number of students being proficient, right? Because myself and my curriculum person, we just didn't have that total understanding of how EVOS work. And then
we don't either.
Let me tell you something. We have spent a lot of time just asking a lot of questions like, okay, how did this work? How did I get all of my 8th graders to be proficient on the science test, but it's not showing up in this data? And, you know, and coming to find out that it's because we only have 6 kids in a class and we're not meeting at 30. We just simply didn't know that. But what we learned was, you know, if we're going to play this game, we at least got to know the formulas that's going to be used to, you know, come up with the results. And that's what we spent a lot of time doing so that we can understand how can we move this -2 index up to a +2. So, you know, it started with us first.
Well, and I think you put it the best that I've heard it put. We're going to play the game. We want to know what the rules are. And I think with growth, that's one of the things where it's, you know, we've had twice since I've been on this board have somebody come up and explain it, and I think it would confuse a PhD in statistics to try to figure out how this is actually calculated, and the answer we get too much is that it's proprietary.
Well, I would say, I don't want to bash too much on growth. I mean, I think you do need to play the game, but just as a person, and I don't know if other principals can attest to this, but my best teachers generally are making growth in their classroom. Like it's aligned to what I see in the classroom. What our internal data says, those teachers that are kind of the highest producers in running the best classrooms, by and large, generally make growth. Which is why I believe in the measure.
But their goal, and I do too, but I think they're probably not saying, I want to make these students meet growth. They're saying, I want to get these students proficient. Wow. And so as they work towards the proficiency, the growth kind of follows with it. And that's what I think I think it's hard to figure out. I think you have to teach towards proficiency rather than teach towards growth, and the growth should come along with it. And that's why we don't understand sometimes when a school can come in with 8 or 9% higher proficiency than the year before but not meet growth, because we don't understand the whole formula. But I think if you teach towards proficiency, that most of the time what you're going to get is you're going to get growth that gets met, and you're going to have higher proficiency scores too.
Right. So I have a few specific questions. So last year you moved into your final facility, right?
A larger facility.
Larger. Yes. Is that what was that located in Beulahville? You moved?
No, ma'am. It was in
So
Jacksonville.
you remained in Jacksonville?
Yes, ma'am.
How many of the students did you retain from the previous year to this year?
We went from 98 students to 169, and after this year, after the Hurricane Florence and the move-abouts that came with that, we landed at about 164, and we retained at least 70% of the kids from the previous year.
So that's way better than it has been in the years past, because that was another
Yes.
issue.
Yes.
Where the kids were coming and going.
Yes. We still have some slight issues with kids moving, whether they're military, and with the population that we serve, I don't want to get into that whole poverty mindset, but when you have parents, it doesn't take much for a parent who come in and just get upset about any little thing, and decide, they've been running from, this school to that school. We have those kind of issues. We have a lot of kids that's connected with this Department of Social Services. So whenever trauma hits high in the home and they're thinking that, let me move and go stay here, just running from DSS. We have a lot of kids that they start out the year with grandma one, and then something happens and they have to go stay with my dad, grandparents, and or they end up with an aunt or uncle. So we still have a lot of that kind of stuff that we're dealing with. That's why we had to increase what we were doing with our parent involvement. We started out with just providing events for parents to come to, and then we were thinking, if we're going to change that mindset, we're going to have to do some trainings. Like this Thursday, we have an EOG&Me training for our parents. Just trying to build that relationship and culture with our parents so that they can trust the system as well.
Are you doing like any extra work with the students that are 1 and 2 years behind? Are they are you doing some after school stuff or things with them?
We don't do after school because of our extended day. Our kids are already in school until 5 o'clock, but that's what we brought in our extra tutors, so that afternoon time we have them pulled for some just basic stuff that they're going to be doing.
You have in-school tutoring.
Yes.
Mediation. How many years have you guys been in existence?
This is our 6th year.
So you started in 13?
Yes, ma'am. And the first 3 or 4 years, I didn't know what in the world I was dealing with. So now, last year I would say it was the first year that we just sort of blew up camp and rebuilt in our thought processes and our staff and everything.
How did the hurricane affect you?
We were closed for about 2 to 3 weeks. We didn't have to close as long as Onslow County Schools did, but we had about 25 kids who lost everything in the storm. So that caused some movement, and we had 2 staff members, including myself, who lost everything in the storm. But we rebound. We got back in. We started providing some support services to our families at the best that we could. So
make sure your teachers know about Fast NC. There's a window right now to put in some grant request money.
Okay, sure will.
Fast NC.
Thank you.
I hope with the hurricane being in the early part of the year, that hopefully, you can get everything back on track, because I would hate to see that impact your grades this year. Right. And I don't even know how you deal with all of a sudden we got to be closed for 3 weeks. I mean, I just don't know how you.
Or losing everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I hate to hear that. So, I hope it doesn't impact y'all too bad.
Would like to see a upward movement on that letter grade.
Yeah.
That's our plan.
Love to see it.
And all of the data that we're looking at right now, we're still trending really good in reading our NC check-in scores. So we're really thinking we're going to be able to get even the D that we have now in reading up to a C. And math is that area that we're just, you know, trying to make sure we give some attention to that.
All right. We look forward to seeing that growth next year.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you for your presentation. Great. At this time, I want to discuss Paul R. Brown. Kind of going back from the conversation yesterday, you know, my position is that we held the sword of Damocles over their head with the revocation. And, you know, they responded by, I think, coming back with a more clear plan. It motivated even the community, I believe, to see it as an asset. And they put some things in place that seem to make sense. We will have, you know, they're on a 10-year charter, so they're not up for renewal for a while till 2020. The process will begin in 2022. But we will see their data from next year in the fall. And I want to recommend that we would let them continue on and bring them back early next year for a kind of a reevaluation of our decision to just let them continue on and see at that point if we would want to, if we need to take any action. So that would, as soon as we have test data. Now, we're not going to have math test data until
August, maybe.
So,
maybe.
but if we bring them, we won't have growth data. Well, I don't know. It's going to be a while.
Person says October.
October.
So maybe we could bring them in November.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess, I don't know if we need a motion, because we never made a motion. So if you could just inform them that they're going to need to report in the fall, either September, October, based on when we have the test data available. All right. So that's the last item on the agenda.
Same as we're done?
What's that?
Is that the same as we're done?
We need to determine if we need 2 days next month.
Move to adjourn?
No.
Hold on. Let's think about one thing here with Paul R. Brown before we get off that. How about maybe let's do a motion on this.
Okay.
And the motion, let's do a motion on this. It's getting late. So I move that we bring them in after test scores, but if they turn one thing in late before then they come back in front of us.
Yeah, that sounds good.
That's right, we forgot.
I mean one thing. They turn in one thing late, because he gave us his word that they wouldn't be late, and also that they'd be on time to the meeting when they come back.
I'll second.
All right, it's been properly moved and seconded. Were you able to capture that motion? Staff?
I'll
Okay. Talk to Stephen.
What it is if they bring back, they're coming back in the fall when we have the test scores. But if they do not, if they turn one thing in, not on
Do
time.
not meet all timely
If they're late on one thing, they have to come back in at the very next meeting that we have, and even if that's the one in Cherokee, they have to drive out there. So, turn your stuff in on time.
That may be an incentive for them to not turn things in late. So
That might be,
really far.
deliberately turn your stuff in late.
No, that's the far piece for us down east.
That's like.
All right, so
I can get to
hearing none, all in favor of Stephen's motion? All right, motion carries. All right,
I move we adjourn.
seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
one day next month, right?
Thank you.
I think we could do
One day?
One day next month.
Monday.
We could do one day.
Monday. Or Tuesday.
Try.
Is Monday or Tuesday better?
Monday.
Monday.
Let's get it over.
What should we do with there was some confusion about the papers that people have been handing us about we shouldn't take them with us. Should we just leave them in the book to be discarded? Do you want us to discard them, shred?
I think if you don't need them,
Like just in the trash? Okay.
I keep all my materials. You never know when
Arrivederci,
litigation
as they
on
say.
something.
Thank you
Just
all.
like,
Have a good week.
okay.
All right, next.
I guess we can
Yes.
say, right?
True, true. That's
Here's
exactly
to
what I
before we
meant.
know it.
Yep.
OCS has copies.
I don't take.
Right.
Sorry.
Cheryl, I'm gonna email
As always.
Yep. All right,
See you guys.
Bye, guys.
y'all be good.
Let me give it to you. Yeah, that was
You seem to
interesting.
hear things before I do.
I don't
which is a little
know.
Scary.
Did he say you're scary or the fact that you hear stuff is scary?
Oh.